Marines! That feels pretty good. I've been retired for 3 years. I've missed this a lot. So, my career, I was a recon Marine, scout sniper, did the MECEP program, went to Marine OCS. Then, hey, we weren't part of SOCOM at the time, the war was on. I joined the Navy SEALs and did a few tours of the Navy SEALs before I went to an organization called JSOC. You know what that is? I'll leave that at that. So that's where my credibility is. 10 straight combat deployments with some of the most lethal warriors. Hey, I'm going to preface this speech, and I preface every speech with this. If I have seen further, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants, men and women like you. I was not the best warrior, I was not the best leader. I stand before you not to preach. I've made a lot of mistakes. I did some things well, but I made a lot of mistakes, and I did not bring all my men home. When you retire or you leave the service, trust me, you have nothing but time to reflect on how you led. And unfortunately, you don't get that time back. I teach leadership for a living now because I'm passionate about it. And I recognize I was not always the best leader. But what I can do is try to share my mistakes and what I learned with those in the present that are holding the line into the future. That's all of you. So as I give you advice, I'm not here to hear myself talk. Trust me, my wife hears me talk enough. I'm here to give you a few nuggets, man, and hopefully maybe 10% sinks in. So this advice that I give, it's universal, from the privates all the way to the colonels and everyone else in between. Here we go. All right, people ask me about the toughest warriors I ever served with. Let me tell you about the toughest, best warriors I ever served with. Let me demystify them. They weren't the loudest guy in the room. They weren't telling everyone about how much combat they had, how many people they killed, and how many medals they had. They definitely weren't the smartest man in the room, or were they trying to be. The people like that were usually the biggest cowards when the rounds started to fly. The most lethal warriors I knew. They were quiet. They were respectful of everyone, regardless of rank. They were kind. They were empathetic to their fellow man. They didn't need to prove their toughness. And they had this vulnerability. I recently interviewed one of the founders of Delta Force, a guy named General Jerry Boykin. He talked about this emotional intimacy amongst warriors. That's not weak to look at somebody and say, hey man, what happened on that target? My head's not right. That little girl that got injured, it's in my mind. That's actually the toughest, strongest thing you could ever do. Guys, those warriors, those great warriors, people gravitated to them for who they were and what they stood for. And those warriors made everyone around them better, to include me. All right, some of you can't realize this right now because you're in it. And again, you don't realize it until you get out. This is as good as it gets. Yes, guarding a armory at SOI in a 6x6 box with your old helmet on. I remember that. And at the time I was miserable, but I realized that's as good as it gets. This thing we call esprit de corps, you're not going to find this anywhere else. This homecoming, this belonging, it doesn't exist out there. And yes, you may not like all your Marines. You may be in a platoon with a guy you don't particularly like. Guess what? That's still your brother. You don't have to like your brother, but you better love your brother. This is a tribe. And the thing about this tribe is you're not born into it. Every single one of you had to earn that title. And I remember crying when that EGA was pinned on me by drill instructors who I highly respected and wanted to be like. All right, let's talk about leading in culture, and I'm going to try to be quick. Leading in culture is all we have, and one very much determines the other. Somebody recently asked me, how did you lead in the military? I said, we lead through love. And I probably just made it very awkward talking about leading through love with a bunch of Marines. Think about it. We lead through love for the Marine Corps. Love for our Marines, which means when I am in a leadership position, I love my Marines by holding them accountable. The highest form of compassion is accountability. The reason we do that is because I'm not going to be around forever, and you're going to lead a platoon. And I need you to be competent and disciplined to do the same thing when I'm gone. I'll tell you this, and I didn't recognize it until I got off the battlefield, is I loved my men and women a lot more than I hated the enemy. That's what guides us on the battlefield. No one is going to touch my brother or sisters in arms. Now to all my Marines, all my Marine leaders, which is all of you, leaders at every level, your Marines will be what they can see. Does anyone remember what leadership principle that is?
Lead by example.
Set the example, lead by example. Amen. Guys, I assure you, your Marines are watching. If you're a Lance Corporal, the PFCs and privates are watching. If you're a platoon commander, your Marines are watching. Leadership and culture is about behavior. It's not about what you preach, it's about what you do. Leadership is a verb. It's about action. And this whole do as I say, not as I do mentality that's going on, what do we call it? Rules for thee, not for me. That doesn't work. And your leadership credibility, if that's who you are, will degrade until your people no longer follow you. They'll execute your orders, but they will have zero respect for you. And I'm going to tell you right now, you are the next best generation. And so will the generation behind you. The whole point as a leader is to create more leaders and to make them better than us. Let me show you one tactic I use. I used as a leader in the military. Do I have any privates right here? PFCs. Come here. Come here. When I was getting a new young soldier, Marine, airman, or sailor, what's your name?
Nato, sir.
What's your first name?
Giovanni, sir.
Giovanni. Hey, Giovanni. Welcome to this unit. I'll tell Giovanni I need him to understand one thing. You are a leader within this organization. You may be a private or private first class, but you are a leader. You have experiences I don't have. You have perceptions I don't have. Now, hey, buddy, you're not going to pick up a platoon anytime soon. And I need you to learn how to lead by following. In order to be a good leader, you have to be a great follower. And guess what? As a lieutenant commander, as a strike force commander, I still fluctuate between a leader and a follower. Sometimes my staff sergeant, who's better at something, is going to take charge. And guess what? I'm going to follow him for that 5 minutes while we're conducting that action. I need you to own your roles and responsibilities at your level. Know them like the back of your hand. I want you to know the expectations I have for you. I'll set them out in the standard we hold here. Be prepared. On the battlefield, you may have to step 2 positions up at a moment's notice. But at the end of the day, you're a leader. You could be the future Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. Or if you want, you can be a colonel leading your own battalion. And right there, I've set this stage. I've treated him like a man, even if he's 19. And guess what? When you set the stage like that, usually the behaviors that you see are what you want to see. Giovanni, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Another thing, there is no such thing as a perfect organization. There's no such thing as flawless leadership. It doesn't exist. I'll tell you what, again, I've been out there. The Marine Corps is pretty damn good. When I talk, people want to hear about the SEALs. I start with the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps taught me how to lead. The Marine Corps laid the foundation for me to be successful. I graduated high school with a 2.9. After a few years in the Marine Corps and they sent me back to school, I graduated with a 3.7 from college. I assure you I did not get smarter during those few years. The Marine Corps is the best led organization that I've seen in the world, so you should be proud about that. Now leading, you hard-charging, A-type Marines, sometimes you a-holes, is hard. We know you're second-guessing some of our decisions. You're picking them apart. You go behind the conics and you're like, what's the old man thinking? What's the gunnery sergeant thinking? It is hard. And guess what? One day you're going to be in that leadership position and you're going to feel the isolation when you're a platoon sergeant because you're no longer one of the boys or a strike force commander next to 40 of guys that you consider to be brothers. but you're not one of the boys anymore. And now you're isolated and made as lonely. And we don't exactly get feedback from you guys. So cut your leaders a freaking break every once in a while. And if you don't agree with one of their decisions, guess what? Over-support them. Back them up is what I'm asking you to do. And a lot of people don't do that. All right, 2 last things, and then let's eat. We're all concerned about the legacy of our leadership. Yeah, Giovanni, you're young in the Marine Corps. You may not be concerned about the legacy of your leadership, but I assure you it exists. And 19 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when you're at the tail end of your career, it's going to matter to you a whole lot. And for you, your legacy of leadership starts right now. People are going to remember back to when you were a young Marine and the type of person that you were. Here's the irony of it. I call it the legacy of leadership. A buddy calls it the irony. I said it earlier. Your job as a leader, one of your primary jobs, is to create more leaders. To create better leaders. That's the whole point, guys. You have to be better than us. And as a leader, you work yourself out of a job. And that sucks. But if you did it right, if you did your duty and made the people behind you better, then we've secured a Marine Corps for another 100 years. And that's what matters. At the end of the day, here's the irony of leadership as well. You don't get to choose whether you're a good leader or not. Somebody asked me, hey Mike, are you a good leader? A buddy was setting me up. I said, yeah, I'd like to think I was a good leader. He said, you don't get to make that decision. Your people do. Your people decide whether you are a good leader or not. And that's why this should be so important. Because you don't want a bad reputation. You want people looking at that guy and saying, that guy was a coach and a mentor. And I am the Marine who I am because of that individual today. Lastly, you guys represent the Marine Corps. When you pin on that EGA, you represent the Marine Corps. That's not optional, that's mandatory, and that's at all times. You are the best recruiting tool for this organization. Out of high school, I was 130 pounds. I met a Force Recon Marine named Staff Sergeant Ben Post. I think he went on to be an instructor at Bridgeport. As a 130-pound kid looking at this Force Recon Marine, about 190 pounds, humbly confident, always smiling, respectful to everyone. I'm like, I want to be that man. I didn't come from a military background. That's what led me to join the Marine Corps. You guys all have that power. Guys, humbled to be here. And anyone who says our country is in peril, they simply need to look in this direction at all of you. As long as you guys have the line, I can sleep soundly at night. Lead well. Semper Fi.